where does this masterpiece fall? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
Most important question of the whole show. Vince, where does Lord of War from 2005, right? 2005?
Yeah.
Rate on your Cageometer.
For a movie, I gotta give it an 8. I really enjoyed this movie the first time I saw it, and I'm glad to see that it held up. Like we talked about before, what the conversation that's being had in the movie is still very relevant to this day. So I thought that was pretty nice to see that this movie's statement is just as powerful today as it was back in 2005 at the height of the GWOT, Global War on Terrorism. I really enjoyed the performances. I thought Ethan Hawke did a great job of playing that character, and Nick in the film, I'll get to him in a minute, it was great too. But just other than Jared Leto, I think everybody else did a good job. But I really enjoyed the story. Like, all jokes aside, you see this guy go and rise through the arms dealer world, and you think things are gonna go well for him because he's supposed to be the hero of the movie, and everything just goes to shit. But he still continues on, like he doesn't let any of that shit phase him. So I love that they don't have any redeeming qualities for this guy, from enlisting his brother to like harassing his soon-to-be wife by like stalking her, to not really being invested in his kid's life, to dealing all these arms, knowing that he's funding these wars that are going to be killing a massive amount of people, to getting his brother killed and all that stuff. Like, there's no redeeming quality, which I really like that they didn't try to make him into a good guy or make you really feel for him. I like that you leave the film viewing him as the bad guy and not liking him, but enjoying the story overall and just seeing how corrupt this world really could be when it comes to running guns. Nick, I'll give Nick a 7. I thought his performance for the character was pretty good. Like, this is a character that he wanted to play, and he kept it pretty contained for the most part. And then when the cagey moments came out, it, for me, pulled me out of his performance. I enjoyed him, don't get me wrong. Like, you're the shit. That's like, that scene has stuck with me since I first watched this movie. But it's a cagey moment. So, but yeah, I think overall, I think the performance, the character that he created in his mind that he then put on the screen, I thought was very good. He's an arms dealer. He doesn't need to be this like over the top person. He's like very factual, very business, very dry. And I think he played that character very well. So for him, 7 out of 10.
All right, that leads us to Nigel. Where does Lord of War rate on your Cageometer?
This was my first time seeing this movie. I liked it. I'm kind of right there with Vince. I'll give it an 8 as well. I thought it was a really good movie. There were a couple of things that I didn't like about it. Like I mentioned before, I didn't like the narration too much. I'm okay with movies having narration, but it did feel like it relied a lot on like just telling you what was going on in the story rather than showing you a lot of the stuff that could happen. And I think that might be due to the fact that it's just trying to cover so much time. There's only so much that they can put on screen, and it helps fill in the blanks. But I think they relied on it a lot to give you kind of that inner monologue of the character rather than showing the character, doing these things or going through this stuff. Also, again, that twist at the end where he's actually been working with the U.S. the whole time, I did kind of feel like it kind of came out of nowhere, and it doesn't really sour the ending of it. It was just kind of unexpected, and it just didn't quite mesh with the rest of the story. I think it was a nice twist. It just wasn't. I don't know. Something feels off about it. I don't know what it is exactly. If it's that they didn't set it up properly, it's like you never get the fact that he's working. If he's been working with the U.S. this whole time, why is he so scared of Interpol? Like, why is he trying to get Interpol off his ass so many times? Like, why couldn't he have played this card earlier and basically been like, "Yeah, you're never going to catch me. You're never going to touch me because of this."
Sorry, I feel like that plane, that when he calls the general from the plane when Interpol's on his ass, he's like, "I can't help you right now."
Yeah.
I feel like that was like his whole thing about, just because they need me now doesn't mean that they're going to need me later. So I do think like if he would have been caught and it was very visible they would have just been like, oh, cutting ties with you.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that he was so connected to all of these different arms dealers, that was kind of is like, they need me now, but they're not going to need me later. But right now, they really, really need me because, when he flips through the newspaper, there's a bunch of, some sort of current event that he's eyeing that makes him think, okay, they're going to need me for this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I didn't get the impression that he was actually working for the U.S. the entire time. I just think he worked in conjunction with the U.S. and
could be whatever they
had,
needed him.
connections within the government that would help him at different times.
Like I said, like working not for him, but with them, right? He's somebody that they go to. And I'm wondering, because they kind of play the timeline a little vague towards the end. I'm wondering if he gets captured right after the events of 9/11. And so he's thinking they're going to need me to help fund the indigenous people.
Yeah.
In this new war
that could be.
Off.
And maybe they didn't mention that because it's a little bit on the nose, like during the height of the Iraq War and everything. Like to bring that up would have soured it more, maybe people. And it could have also just been like they didn't want him spilling the beans. Like if he's going to go to trial now, he could let slip that I've been selling M16s for 15 years. All that stuff. But
or maybe they're trying to get him killed.
Yeah,
Epstein style.
Let him go so that he can be shot accidentally on purpose.
Right.
On purpose.
Yeah.
But it's a good movie overall. I'd give it an 8. I think it's a movie that should be watched. Give it a critical eye. It says things that not a lot of movies say, presents it in a way that not a lot of movies present it. So, solid film. I also didn't like Jared Leto that much, but I didn't have as much problem with him as you guys had. I think he fit the role pretty well as like your annoying younger brother who screws things up, and he's a good character for playing that. But for Nick Cage himself, I'll give him a 7 as well, mainly because I didn't get as much out of his performance emotionally as I would have liked to have gotten. Like I didn't feel as much of his emotion as I feel like we should have. And like when Vitaly gets killed, he cries about it, but it's like I didn't feel that he was that sad. It was, maybe that was intentional. Maybe it was trying to show that he's kind of heartless in all things. But I just say across the whole movie, like he's smart and he's witty and he's a little charming in a lot of ways, but I just didn't feel like a performance that sold me emotionally, I guess, as what I'm trying to say. It's hard to articulate. I don't know. If you watch the movie, you might understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then again, the narration is definitely really flat, and I don't know if that was intentional. Like I hate to use Spirit of Vengeance as a watermark, but I feel like his couple of narrated lines in Spirit of Vengeance just had a lot more character in them than his entire reading of lines in this movie. And I've seen him in other movies like Weatherman. He's got really good monologues in that too. Feels a lot more like a human behind it. This one, it just sounded like he was sitting in a sound booth reading lines because he came in after the fact and had to read the lines doing the storyline, or
like an audio book.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of Harrison Ford in the Blade Runner cut where he has to read the stupid monologue at the end to tie everything up, and it sounds like he really doesn't want to be there. So, that's kind of what the sense I got from it. And to have the narration be such a large part of this movie, it really stuck out and kind of grated with me. But just overall, its performance I thought was okay. It was good. It got the job done. I just didn't feel like it was anything spectacular, especially compared to some of the stuff we've seen him do. Good, not great. So 7 out of 10.
Yeah. On my Cageometer, I'm going to echo almost everything. I didn't plan this, but we all had the exact same ratings. So 8 on the movie. I think it's a really solid movie and a really great message to get across, and kind of like let you know that, like, everybody always thinks that the U.S. is the good guy, but like we do our fair share of awful things around the world. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have to wonder if a lot of the things that are happening around the world are our fault. It's like that, I forget what it's from, but that meme of the Nazis who are like sitting on the front line, and they're like, "Are we the baddies?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
This movie will definitely give you a different perspective on the United States and the way that we deal with conflicts around the world, and the things that we do to instigate things, and potentially even like funding both sides of a war just so that it'll destabilize that country so that we can come in and add something that's going to make us money, whip a little industry on a country. I feel like that's kind of what was going on with North and South Korea when we got involved with that. Like, well, this is an opportunity for us to whip some industry in here. And, I feel like the performances are all pretty great. As much as I don't like Jared Leto, I do. He was the character that he was supposed to be. When I watched this movie before, I had a tainted view on him because of his exploits off screen, and also some of the film performances that I've absolutely hated from him. I thought he did a great job. He's a drug addict and just kind of the loser of the family, and he played that role perfectly. Now that we know kind of more about him, was he even acting? I don't want to like rehash the same things because I feel like I have a very similar view of this film that you guys do. Over on Cage, I also gave him 7, and I see the criticism on some of the things. Like, yeah, he definitely didn't pull me in with the emotional weight that he normally does. And like Nigel said, like especially in that scene where his brother dies, like yes, he has to collect himself, and he knows that if he doesn't finish this deal, he's going to die himself. And obviously, he's a selfish dude. All he really cares about is himself. Throughout the entire movie, from start to finish, all he ever cares about is his own well-being and his own financial success and getting everything that he wants throughout. And even after his brother dies, he's kind of just like, well, we got to get this deal done. So he studies himself and goes right back into it. But at no point where you're like feeling him being a super heartbroken person over what happened there.
Yeah. And I think of all the moments in the film, you could have had that there and give him some of that humanity there, just so you can see that he is a human under all that, but he still does all this terrible shit.
Maybe like you said, that was the point,
bit.
was like he's not really a human. He's such a flawed person at this point that he barely even reacts to his brother dying. This is 100% his fault that his brother just died. Even though his brother did something stupid, it was his fault pulling him out of, him telling him he didn't want to go on this arms deal, but still making him go, and it ultimately leading to his death. And but I mean, the narration was pretty flat. It didn't bother me as much as it bothered Nigel, but I kind of like the through line of that narration, and I think it's definitely because they had to explain so much stuff. Like, you're connecting events that happen over the course of 20 years. You kind of have to move things along, especially like some of those montages, like the one where he's like, I sold to this country, then I sold to this country, I sold to every country except for the Salvation Army, every army except for the Salvation Army, that whole thing. But I feel like the narration was kind of the glue of the film. And Nick Cage probably could have brought more to it, but I think it was kind of calculated that he did it so flat because, he doesn't really get emotional about this stuff. He just doesn't care. It was kind of like,
it's business.
Then I did this, and then I went over there, and then all these people died.
I also feel like that's just how his interpretation of that character, like that person, like Eastern European, Russian descent, just they're known as hard people and not very emotional. So I guess I took it as like that's his interpretation of the character. So even though he does feel some emotion towards his brother, he just locks it up and goes back to just being almost robotic.
I guess that was part of it too. Like, I didn't really buy him.
Yeah,
I was gonna say I didn't really buy him as a Ukrainian. Like, I know he's supposed to be a kid when he immigrated this time. I just didn't. It just felt like Nick Cage. They were just like,
but they
putting wallpaper over saying he's Ukrainian and calling
he
it
and
good.
Vitaly both remember Odessa in Ukraine. So they were old enough to remember, which means they had to have been like 6, 7, 8, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would think some of the accent would still be there, but at no point is there any accent from him or Jared Leto. Like,
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when they slip into
When they
Ukrainian
speak-
or Russian,
yeah,
I'm
when
not
they
sure
speak
which
to each
language
other.
they're speaking.
Yeah.
I think they're speaking Russian to each other.
Yeah, I think so.
Even then, there's like no real accent. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, they're just reciting memorized words that they're told to, but
Just like the Japanese and Prisoners of the Ghostland that didn't have
Yeah.
subtitles.
but us.
Whatever he says while he's holding his testicle up there. Whatever. But anyways, high marks though. I feel like this is one of our highest rated films, and
Yeah.
it is a great movie, and definitely one I recommend that everybody go and check out. I feel like it's kind of a forgotten Cage performance. I feel like there's many of these films where it's like, you know, some of the movies get kept in the snowball of pop culture, but a lot of them have fallen by the wayside. And Bringing Out the Dead, I feel like, was a good one that was left behind, and Lord of War, Matchstick Men, Joe. So
Yep.
definitely check it out.